Shirley McLamb Cooper, at the home of Betty Holland in Salemburg, North Carolina, January the 31st, 2012.
Okay. I'm Shirley McLamb Cooper. I was born in Sampson County, about 4 miles from Salemburg, near Piney Green. My mother was Eloise Strickland, and my daddy, James Lofton McLamb. I was delivered at my grandparents' Strickland's by Dr. Donnie Royal of Salemburg. I was delivered at the home, about 1 mile from where we eventually wound up living, near my granddaddy McLamb. I graduated from Salemburg High School in May of 1954, and my daddy was a big farmer. He was growing crops using the mule and the plow. We had cucumbers. That was our first crop that we sold, and we were in the middle of picking cucumbers at that time. One of my neighbors had started working at the sewing plant in Salemburg. That was Salemburg Manufacturing Company. They made ladies' house dresses. And they had not hired a bookkeeper for that company at that time. It was done at a sister company in Warsaw, because they had not grown to that many employees at that time, because Salemburg Manufacturing began in the early part of 1953. She came by, and her name was Lois Jackson, and she said, "Shirley, would you be interested in working in the office at the plant?" I said, "Yes," and she said, "Well, they interviewed today, and you might want to go out there tomorrow and check on it. They probably have not hired yet." And so my dad said, "Well, as soon as we get through with picking the cucumbers over, and I get them to the market at Piney Green, I will take you down there." So that's what we did. I was not there on a day that the manager was there. He had gone to the Warsaw plant that day. So Mrs. Wilma Simpson said, "Shirley, if you can go over to Warsaw today and talk with Mr. Adams, I believe you might have a chance." So she called Mr. Adams, and Dad took me over to Warsaw. I had my interview. They gave me a typing test. They gave me another little mental type test. I can't remember what it was called. And he said, "Shirley, when can you start to work?" I said, "Well, when can I start to work?" He said, "Can you start on June 28th? Can you come to Warsaw and live over here each week?" Said, "We'll have a place for you to stay." They had a Frederick's tourist home at that time. So each Monday morning, my dad would take me over to Warsaw, and I trained there for 2 weeks. He'd come back on Friday afternoon and pick me up. I worked at Salemburg Manufacturing Company. The company grew from about 60 employees to start with to way over 200 people. We made ladies' plain, simple house dresses. At that time, pants was not a ladies' thing. But as ladies started wearing pants and jeans, the dresses didn't go well. And so in 1973, the plant closed. And at that time, we did have another plant who came in making men's shirts from Garland. That was called Garland Manufacturing there, so we called Salemburg Fleet Line of Salemburg rather than Salemburg Manufacturing. And I worked there until August of 1975. I went to file for unemployment with the Employment Security in Clinton, and I spent the rest of my working life until June of 2003 working at the Employment Security. When I was 18 years old, I began a job with a local sewing plant, Salemburg Manufacturing, and we worked mostly women. We had about 4 men that worked in the plant total. We had a machinist and a cutter who cut the dresses out, cut the patterns, a janitor, and our manager was managing Warsaw Manufacturing and Salemburg Manufacturing at this time. Well, we had a policy. Our ladies did not miss any work. They worked. They were there on time and they made a good day. But if, of course, one was in the hospital, they got a flower from the company. But if they were out 3 days, we knew they were sick. Well, we did a fruit basket for them, and our local treasure chest in Salemburg, Mrs. Kathleen Carter ran that, made the basket up, and she did a wonderful job. She would go over to Sneed's 5 and 10 cent store. She bought the Easter baskets, and she sprayed them natural colors. Most of the time, they were like a medium brown. And she filled the bottom with grass, little artificial grass, and she filled that basket full of different fruits. She always liked to stick something in it kind of personal. Back then, some of our women smoked, and she would wrap a pack of cigarettes with some foil, and she would put that in there, and that would kind of shine, and she'd tie a handkerchief, a real pretty handkerchief. We didn't use Kleenex back then. That hadn't become so popular. We had handkerchiefs, and she'd tie a pretty handkerchief in the bow and make it all frilly, and it just thrilled those ladies because everybody didn't get a basket, because everybody didn't get sick 3 days, and if they ever got a basket, they were tickled pink. But anyway, one day I had called, and I was probably 18 or 19, and Miss Carter was on up there a little bit. I'm sure she was at least 50. And our cutoff at that time for hiring ladies was 40 years old, which would now be a no-no. But that was okay then, and the laws have changed. So she knew that, you know, the company was new, and we probably didn't have too many women that was more than 40. So I came up with a lady that didn't smoke, and she was trying to figure out what she could add to her basket. And she said, "Well, Shirley, what age is this lady?" I said, "Oh, she's old." She said, "Now, what do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, she's probably 40. She said, "Is that old?" I said, "Well," I got to thinking, you know, that she was probably more than that. And I said, "Well, a little bit old." So I worked there, and I had become 40 years old. And she knew that I had had a birthday, and I was 40. Somebody had told her. She sat behind me at church each Sunday, right on the next pew. So I felt someone punch me on my shoulder, and I looked around, and it was her, and she said, "Shirley, have we had a birthday?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Are we 40? I said, "Yes, ma'am." She says, "Is it still old?" I says, "No, ma'am." December the 11th, 1935. Dr. Donnie Royal of Salemburg delivered me at my granddaddy Martin Strickland's house. That's where I was born, in Hamburg, which is about 4 miles out of Salemburg. later on, we moved to a house that belonged to my granddaddy McLamb, and that was just about 1 mile farther from Salemburg. I grew up there. My daddy farmed, and there was 4 of us children at that time. I had a sister who was just a little bit more than 2 years younger than me. Had a brother who, I remember him being born at that house. Of course, us 2 girls were not there. We were carried to our granddaddy Strickland's home until my little brother got there. And he was born on December 26th in 1937, which I had just turned 4 years old. I remember that distinctly. Me and my sister, 2 years younger, were so proud to have a brother. And later, about another year and a half later, we had another brother. He was born on June 10th, 1.5 years later. As we grew up, I was probably about 12 years old. Salemburg had a theater, and it was called the Alice Theater, named for my best friend's sister, Lou Alice Sawyer. Salemburg was quite large at that time. I have just lately made a list of all the businesses that were in town at the time I came to work in town at 18, which I think they all were there when I was about 12. There was about 42 different businesses, and to name a few, it was Ramby Royal's grocery store, John Two's clothing store, Sneed's 5 and 10 cent, Rob Williams dry cleaners, Eve's beauty shop. We had 2 barber shops. One was Hall's barber shop and Barefoot's barber shop, and even a shoe shop that was called Bullock's Shoe Shop. Back then we didn't get quite so many shoes, and so they were repaired. I've worn lots of shoes after I got grown and my foot quit growing that had been repaired. Our feet grew so fast as children that we didn't quite wear them out so quickly. But my dad and my 2 brothers loved these Western movies that were showing at the Alice Theater. And Mom and my sister and myself were not that much about movies. But every Saturday night, the stores stayed open late. All the stores were open, and people were beginning to come to the movies. The theater would be full, and so we would come with Dad and the boys, and we would just browse around town and go to Two's store and look at the clothing, and Mom might pick up something, and we'd go down to Sneed's 5 and 10 and pick up an item or 2, and we always went, that was our treat, to Ramby Royal's grocery store. And Mom would get all 3 of us a Pepsi. And they were big then. I think they have kind of shrunk a little now. And she'd get a large box of Fig Newtons. That was really a treat. And we'd sit in the car and munch on our Fig Newtons and drink our Pepsi Colas and watch the people walking the streets. It was busy. I mean, it was big time in Salemburg on Saturday night. And what really made my day on the following Monday was maybe a little boy that you kind of had your eye on would say, "Oh, I saw you in Salemburg Saturday night." And that would just really make my day for that day.